My name is Jordan Blake, and to most of my extended family, I'm the one who does something with helicopters. That's how they phrase it. It's a vague, slightly dismissive wave of the hand that covers everything from changing oil filters to washing windshields. They know I'm in the Army. They know I wear a flight suit. But they can't quite place what I actually do. And at this point, I don't bother correcting them. The annual Blake family barbecue is a summer tradition I show up to out of obligation more than anything else. It's loud, full of lawn chairs, paper plates, and stories that get retold every year as if they're brand new. It's also where I turn into the punchline they don't realize they're making. This year was no different. The heat was oppressive, the kind of mid-July humidity that sticks your shirt to your back. I had barely set down my bowl of potato salad before Uncle Rick looked up from his plate. He was sweating over the grill, holding a pair of tongs like a scepter. "Still doing vehicle stuff, Jordy?" he asked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. He grinned like it was a clever little joke. Like I should be flattered he remembered I had a job at all. I smiled. Not because I found it funny, but because I've had years to practice looking unfazed. I nodded and said, "Yeah, keeps me busy, Uncle Rick." "Well, someone's gotta tighten the bolts, right?" He laughed, flipping a burger. "Can't have those birds falling out of the sky." I took a sip of my iced tea and let the conversation move on without me. It's strange how people can be around you your whole life and never really know who you are. I've sat through these cookouts since I was a kid. I've watched cousins become lawyers, dentists, and tech consultants. Each of them was introduced with pride, given the floor to explain their achievements. Me? I'm the one they ask about gas mileage. There's something exhausting about having your life boiled down to one small, simplified version that people can laugh at over burgers. I used to try to explain. I'd start with my rank, Lieutenant Colonel, or mention the squadron I commanded. I'd talk about the hours I logged in the air, the decisions made at 3,000 feet under night vision goggles. But I stopped when I realized they weren't listening to understand. They just wanted something easy to file me under. So now I let them believe what they want. I show up in jeans and a plain t-shirt, park down the street instead of the driveway, and keep my hands in my pockets during introductions. It's easier that way. Quiet. Clean. There's a kind of safety in being underestimated. It creates space to breathe, to observe. But it also builds a slow, steady ache. Like a bruise you've forgotten about until someone presses on it, grinning, asking if it still hurts. I stood there on the back lawn, watching the smoke rise from the grill, and wondered if anyone at that barbecue knew I held command over 30 UH-60S Black Hawk helicopters and 400 personnel, or that 3 days ago I had signed off on a tactical extraction plan for a special forces unit in a region I couldn't name, or that I'd flown missions that made the front page of newspapers they probably didn't read. I knew the answer, of course. They didn't. And they wouldn't. Not today. Not yet. I grew up in a house full of men, brothers, uncles, cousins, all loud, all confident, all certain they knew how the world worked. I was the youngest and the only girl, which meant I was both protected and underestimated in equal measure. From a young age, I learned how to keep up. I threw tighter spirals than most of my cousins. I could beat half of them in a foot race by age 10. But no matter how fast or tough I was, someone always reminded me I was still a girl. When I talked about joining the military, the laughter came first, then the warnings. My dad said, "You sure about that, Jordy? It's not a place for someone like you. It's rough. It's dirty." My mom offered a nervous smile and asked if I'd thought about nursing instead. "The Army needs nurses too, honey. That's dignified." They all meant well. That's the part that stung the most. It wasn't rage or anger that met my decision. It was a concern, a soft kind of dismissal, like I was too delicate to understand what I was asking for. I remember the day my acceptance letter from West Point came in. I brought it into the kitchen, heart pounding, face lit up, hoping someone would celebrate with me. My dad read the envelope. He looked me over, chewing on his lip. "You really want to do that?" he asked. "I'd just signed up for something foolish." "You know you'll have to cut your hair. You won't have a normal life." He wasn't being cruel, but he wasn't proud either. He just didn't get it. To him, I was throwing away safety, femininity, maybe even marriage, to chase something that didn't fit who he thought I was. I kept those moments in my pocket like tiny stones, not heavy enough to break me, but sharp enough to remind me what I was walking into. I didn't argue. I just nodded, took the advice with a smile, and kept going. The funny thing is, no one ever questioned my work ethic. They just questioned my place. Like effort was fine, but ambition needed to be rerouted toward something softer, safer, more traditional. Even at West Point, it was clear that some people looked at me and saw a fluke. A girl in boots, probably there on a diversity quota. I learned early to speak less, do more, and let my results explain the rest. That mindset followed me through flight school, through the endless hours in the simulator, through my first deployment to Iraq, then Afghanistan. But back home, I was still the baby. Still the girl who got sunburned too easily. Still the one who had no business commanding anything that flew. They didn't say it directly. They didn't have to. It was in the way my father talked more to my brothers about politics or war stories, in the way my mother bragged about her niece, the veterinarian, but hesitated when asked what I did. "Oh, Jordan is in the Army," she'd say vaguely. "She works on the base." When I shipped out for my first command tour, no one came to the send-off. I told myself it was fine. They were busy. It was just another post. But somewhere inside, I had hoped for a small sign, that they saw me. They didn't. And for a long time, I let that be enough. Silence became a kind of armor. I'd get the same questions every time I came home. "Still working late nights? Don't you want something more stable? You ever think about coming home and settling down?" And I'd answer with the same lines. "Keeps me busy. We'll see. Not ready yet." I wasn't lying. I was just choosing what not to say. Choosing which version of me was easier to sit with at a kitchen table full of people who thought ambition had a dress code and titles were earned behind desks. But this year felt different. This year, there was Tyler. Tyler was my cousin's kid, 23 years old, fresh out of a mid-tier engineering college. He was loud, confident, and currently the center of the family's universe. Why? Because Tyler had just landed a prestigious internship at Aerotech Defense Systems, a massive government contractor. He sat in the center of the patio, holding a beer like a trophy, wearing an Aerotech polo shirt that was tucked in a little too tightly. "It's high-level stuff," Tyler was saying, his voice projecting so everyone could hear. "We're working on the next-gen rotor systems, classified specs. I can't really talk about it, but let's just say the Army is begging us for this tech." My dad nodded, impressed. "That's incredible, Ty. Working with the big dogs, huh?" "Oh yeah, Uncle Bob," Tyler grinned. "I was in a meeting last week with the VP of Engineering. We're reshaping how these birds fly. It's all about aerodynamics and composite materials. You gotta be smart to even walk in the building." He looked over at me. "No offense, Jordan," Tyler said, flashing a smirk. "I know you're on the operational side, changing fluids and checking tires. But the engineering? That's where the real power is. The circle chuckled. Jordan keeps them running, Uncle Rick chimed in. Tyler builds them better. I took a slow sip of my water. I knew Aerotech. I knew them very well. In fact, the next-gen rotor system Tyler was bragging about, it was the Block 3 upgrade package. And the reason the Army was begging for it was because my squadron had rejected the initial prototype 3 months ago due to stability issues in high-heat environments. I had personally sat in a conference room at the Pentagon and told the Aerotech executives, Tyler's bosses, that their design was flawed and I wouldn't sign off on the acquisition until they fixed the vibration dampeners. Tyler didn't know that. Tyler thought I was a mechanic. It sounds like important work, Tyler, I said evenly. It is, he said, puffing his chest out. Actually, my boss is stopping by later. Colonel David Tran. Retired, obviously. He's a senior VP at Aerotech now. He's in town for a conference and said he'd drop by to say hi to the family. He loves mentoring the new talent. My dad's eyebrows shot up. A colonel and a VP? Coming here? Yeah, Tyler said, feigning casualness. He's a good guy. Told me I'm on the fast track. Wanted to meet the folks. The energy in the backyard shifted instantly. A VIP was coming. My mom started clearing paper plates nervously. Uncle Rick buttoned his Hawaiian shirt. Tyler checked his hair in his phone's reflection. Make sure there's a fresh burger for the colonel, my dad ordered. Jordan, maybe move your car. It's a little dusty. We want the driveway clear for his Lexus. Sure, Dad, I said. I walked out to the street. I moved my 6-year-old sedan down the block. When I sat back in the driver's seat for a moment, listening to the hum of the engine, I laughed. Just once. A short, dry sound. They were panicking over a retired colonel, a man who was coming to flatter his intern's family. I wondered if they knew that in the active-duty world, a lieutenant colonel in command of a combat aviation squadron, me, held the power to bankrupt a program like Tyler's with a single signature. Probably not. I walked back to the party. I resumed my spot in the corner. I waited. At 6:30 p.m., a sleek black BMW pulled into the driveway. Tyler jumped up like he'd been sitting on a spring. That's him. Everyone, act normal. A man stepped out of the car. Tall, graying hair, wearing a sharp blazer over a t-shirt. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had spent decades giving orders. It was David Tran. I knew him. We had served together in the 101st Airborne years ago, when I was a captain, and he was my battalion commander. Since he retired and moved to the industry, we had sat across from each other in acquisition meetings. Tyler rushed over to shake his hand. David, sir, so glad you could make it, Tyler said, his voice pitching up an octave. Good to see you, Tyler, Tran said, smiling politely. He handed a bottle of wine to my mother, who looked like she might faint. Please come in, my dad said, pumping Tran's hand. I'm Bob, Tyler's uncle. We've heard so much about the work you're doing. Tyler says he's practically running the place. Tran chuckled. He's a bright kid. We're happy to have him on the team. The family gathered around Tran like moths to a light. They asked him about the contracts. They asked him about the Pentagon. They hung on his every word. I stayed back, leaning against the fence, watching. So, Colonel, Uncle Rick asked, Tyler tells us you guys are building the new helicopters. That must be something. It's a big project, Tran nodded. The Black Hawk is the workhorse of the Army. We're trying to make it faster, lighter. But, he sighed, scratching his chin. We've hit a few snags with the final approvals. The Army is particular. Bureaucracy, right? Tyler laughed. Too many paper pushers getting in the way of innovation. Tran smiled tightly. Not exactly paper pushers, Tyler. The operational commanders. They fly these things. If they don't like the feel of the stick, they don't buy it. We have to respect that. Tyler waved a hand dismissively. Well, once they see the new specs I worked on, they'll have to approve it. It's perfect. Tran didn't answer. His eyes were scanning the backyard. He looked past Tyler, past my dad, past the grill. His gaze stopped on me. He froze. I saw the recognition hit him. He blinked, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I wasn't in uniform. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. My hair was down. But David Tran knew my face. He knew my eyes. He pushed past Tyler. "Excuse me," Tran said. He walked straight across the patio. The chatter died down. Everyone watched, confused, as the VIP guest walked away from the golden boy and toward the quiet cousin in the corner. Tran stopped 3 feet in front of me. He didn't smile. He straightened his back. It wasn't a formal salute. We were civilians today, but the posture was unmistakable. It was deference. "Commander Blake?" Tran said. His voice carried clearly across the silent yard. I nodded slowly. "David." "It's been a while." The silence in the backyard was heavy. "I didn't know you were family," Tran said, gesturing to the group. "I'm Tyler's cousin," I said. Tran looked back at Tyler, who was standing there with his mouth open. Then he looked back at me. A look of realization dawned on his face. The snag in his project. The particular commander who kept rejecting his specs. "Wait," Tran said, a nervous chuckle escaping him. "You're this Blake? The Blake family?" "Small world," I said. Tyler stepped forward, confused. "David? You know Jordan? She works on the vehicles. At the base." Tran turned to look at Tyler. The warmth was gone from his eyes. It was replaced by the cold, hard look of a businessman realizing he was standing in front of his most difficult client. "Tyler," Tran said sharply, "she doesn't work on the vehicles. She owns them." Tyler blinked. "What?" Tran turned to the group. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Jordan Blake. She is the squadron commander of the 182nd Aviation Regiment. She commands the entire fleet of Black Hawks for the division." He pointed a finger at Tyler. "And more importantly, Tyler, she is the acquisition authority for the Block 3 upgrade. The paper pusher you just insulted? The one holding up your project because the vibration specs were off by 2 millimeters? Tran looked at me. "That's her." The silence that followed was absolute. My father looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in years, he didn't see his little girl, who needed protection. He saw a stranger who held enough power to make a retired colonel nervous. Uncle Rick dropped his tongs. Tyler looked like he was going to be sick. He looked from Tran to me, the color draining from his face. "You?" Tyler whispered. "You're the one who sent back the Red Line report last month? The one who tore apart my aerodynamic model?" I took a sip of my water. "Your yaw stability was compromised at 90 knots, Tyler," I said calmly. "I told you in the report. I'm not putting my pilots in a bird that shakes when it banks. Fix the dampeners, and maybe I'll sign the check." I looked at Tran. "Tell your engineering team to read page 42 of my feedback. They missed a stress fracture in the tail rotor simulation." Tran nodded vigorously. "I will, Commander, absolutely. We'll have a revision on your desk Monday morning." "Good," I said. I turned to my dad. He was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. "You command the squadron?" he asked, his voice weak. "I thought. You said you just moved people around." I do move people around, Dad, I said. I move 400 soldiers, and I moved $30 million of equipment. I looked at my mom. She was clutching her wine glass, her eyes wide. And I don't fix helicopters, I added softly. I fly them, and I decide who builds them. The rest of the barbecue was different. The noise level dropped. The jokes stopped. Tyler disappeared inside the house. I suspect he was hiding, or maybe frantically texting his engineering team. David Tran didn't leave my side. He ignored the rest of the family. He spent the next hour asking me about flight dynamics, about operational tempo, about what I needed from his company to make my mission successful. My family stood on the periphery, watching. They saw the way Tran listened to me. They saw the way he deferred to me. They saw the way I spoke, not with the quiet, passive voice I used at family dinners, but with the sharp, decisive tone of a woman who is used to being obeyed. They were seeing the real Jordan for the first time, and they were terrified of her. When Tran finally left, shaking my hand with both of his and promising to fix the specs, the sun had set. The fireflies were out. I walked to the cooler to grab water. Uncle Rick was standing there. He looked at me, then at the ground. He stammered. I didn't know, Geordie, about the rank and the responsibility. I know, Uncle Rick, I said. You should have said something, he muttered defensively. We thought you were just, you know. I know what you thought, I said. I looked around the yard. My dad was sitting in his lawn chair, staring at the fire pit. He looked older, smaller. I realized then that I didn't need their apology, and I certainly didn't need their permission to be who I was. I walked over to my dad. I'm going to head out, I said. Early flight tomorrow. He looked up. There was no dismissal in his eyes this time. No, be careful. No, are you sure? There was just respect, and maybe a little bit of fear. Okay, he said. Drive safe. Colonel. I smiled. It's Lieutenant Colonel, Dad. But thanks. I walked to my car parked down the street, the dusty 6-year-old sedan that Tyler had sneered at. I got in. I started the engine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from David Tran. Apologies for the ambush, Commander. I had no idea that was your family. I'll make sure the intern, Tyler, is reassigned to a different department if there's a conflict of interest. I laughed. I typed back, keep him. He needs to learn that details matter. Just make him read page 42 again. I put the phone down. I looked back at the house. The lights were warm in the windows. They were probably talking about me right now, rewriting their stories, trying to figure out how they missed the commander sitting at their kitchen table for 10 years. It didn't matter. I put the car in gear. I wasn't the quiet one because I had nothing to say. I was quiet because I was saving my voice for the frequency that mattered. And as I drove away, leaving the confused silence of my family behind, I felt lighter than I had in years. They finally knew who I was. But more importantly, I remembered that I never needed them to know in the first place. I had a squadron to run,